this exercise, we are building the Think Different uh, page, and I have a good portion of 2.2 open in front of me and a preview of what this looks like so far. And I've tried to kind of minimize my screen over here. We're actually going to be working on these two E's. So this isn't the very best view, but this will just give us a little bit of an example as we're working. I've highlighted a couple of the places that we're going to be looking at, which is an offset class that we'll be working with in terms of a child, an offset child, and then using the span tag. So to begin, we're going to use span around the two E's. And you can see when you add a span tag, Code Spaces automatically gives me the closing span tag. It's a little easier for me to just stick the E's in there. So right now this isn't going to do anything for me. If I look at my updated view, even if I refresh the page, my E's are still the same because I haven't affected what that span class will do for me. To do that, I want to look in my CSS styles. So we're using internal style sheets on the page with the style tag. And we have an H1 style for H1. We have a style for div. We have an offset style. We're going to add another style here for any time we use the span element. And we're going to kind of specify that by saying anytime we have offset something and then we've got the span element included. So essentially we're saying whenever span is a child of offset, then do this thing. And what we're going to ask for is the display to be inline block, which just means those E's will stay on the same line. They will not be making new paragraphs. And then we're going to add a transform. And we're using transform for rotate. And we have played with this a little bit, and we like the way it looked when it was rotated by 12 degrees. So now, if I come over here, I can see something crazy is happening. I'm going to expand out my browser, and I can see that my E's are both rotating. They're about 12 degrees rotated. So that's the starting place, okay? That's where we are using span to surround just something on a single line and change it. This whole word is already being affected by that offset class. So E is being changed by anytime we use the span element inside that offset class. Okay. The next thing that we'll do in this exercise is make another difference. So that second E, we're going to rotate it kind of backwards or counterclockwise. And this time, since it's kind of just a one-off, we will do that actually right here inside your HTML. So instead of affecting the second E with that offset span class that we've put up in our style sheet, we're going to go ahead and do that here. And we'll keep the span element, but instead we'll put the style right here into the element. So you can see I'm using a little bit of my code tips. When I pressed return, I got the equal sign and the two quotes, because whenever we use an inline style, we're going to need to say style equals quote and wrap the whole thing in quotes. So here we'll add our transform, and we'll use rotate again, and instead of 12 degrees we'll do negative 12 degrees. And the closing span tag kind of takes care of my of closing that rotation, because that's all kind of included in that first span element. So now if I look at my live preview, my first E is rotating one way, my second E is rotating another way. And feel free to mess around with these numbers and kind of just see what you get with different values. I think the best way to learn what's happening is to play with those values. The last thing in this exercise is we are also taking a look at how this word different is wrapped in an H1 tag. And it's a lot of space because it's such a kind of, we're using a large typeface there. So there is a style for line spacing that's not really going to work for us in this case because there's not two H1s. There's no line space between two H1s. So instead, we will kind of accommodate decreasing the spacing there by using a negative margin value. This kind of gets a bad rap. Sometimes people will say that negative margins are a little bit of a hack, but it actually does produce valid code, and sometimes it's just nice to get the job done in sort of like most economical way, so to speak, code-wise. So here we're going to put in some negative values for margin top and also for margin bottom. I love using the code hints because it helps me write code with fewer errors. I make fewer mistakes when I use those hints. And so if we look now, we'll see we have really tight layout in terms of our typography, and that word different is kind of landing a little bit closer to all the thinks, which is what I had envisioned in my first sketch of this project. Okay, with those changes in place, I would now be ready to go and stage all of my changes and say rotation, something like that. Just remind myself of what I did there and go ahead and sync up so that my repo would also have all the code, all the changes that I just made.